The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing well and staying safe. It is with great pleasure that I'm here today to participate in the opening ceremony of today's webinar, 21st Century Leadership and Organizational Development, an Introduction, with our dear expert trainer, Mr. Nigel Tomlinson. My name is Vlatko, and I'm an international training consultant at LEORON. I will be present to ensure that everything runs smoothly, so if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. Before we start, I would like to introduce you to our expert trainer, Mr. Nigel Tomlinson. I am pleased to announce that Nigel is one of our leading experts at LEORON on topics such as leadership, management, strategy, change management, organizational development, and many others. He has professional experience of over 35 years, and I'm positive that he might have already collaborated with some of you. If you have any questions during the webinar, please write them down in the questions section located in the control panel, and Nigel will respond to you with the answers by the end of the session. Kindly note that after attending this session, today, each of you will receive a certificate of attendance on your emails. Okay, thank you all, and I wish you a very informative and beneficial session ahead. Nigel, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you, Vlatko. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This webinar serves as an introduction to the aspects of leadership and organizational development, two subjects which are becoming increasingly important in business and, well, and in fact, any organization operating in the 21st century. There are many challenges that we face as organizations, as businesses, as corporate units. We live in very uncertain times. And by that, I'm not just referring to what we are all going through at this moment in time, the global pandemic of COVID-19, the coronavirus. We have been in uncertain times for much longer than that. It's known as VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that is why already the nickname has been given to the 21st century, and we're only 20 years in. We're only 1/5 of the way through this century, and already it's gained the label of the VUCA century. And we operate now in what is essentially the VUCA world. Technology has done much to improve our ability to communicate and to move businesses and organizations faster than they have ever been known to move in the history of organizations on this planet. However, such technology also brings with it problems. We also live in a time where people have become not just an organization's most expensive asset or commodity, they have become the most valuable. And if we do not use their abilities to the full potential that they have, we are essentially missing a trick. And not only that, we're wasting money. We live in a time now where we can get ideas from just about every level of an organization. So the way in which we operate now is considerably different from how it was 20 years ago. And in fact, it's barely recognizable from the way that we operated from the period, say, immediately in the post-war period after the Second World War through to the early 1990s. There's been an evolution in management thinking. We cannot anymore just manage. We have to lead. That is the key to unlocking the potential of an organization. So what we're going to look at today is how this uncertainty, and we know that with uncertainty, there are pressures, there are challenges. There has to be change. we have embraced change in many different ways. We've embraced it with technology, the way that we even communicate with what has become a growing obsession with mobile phones, iPads, portable computers. And in fact, if it wasn't for that technology, we wouldn't be having this webinar right now. So we know that change is all around us and it's all pervasive. And that is why just maintaining systems and processes is simply not going to give us what we need. And what we need is sustainable competitive advantage. That is the only reason why we are in business. It's the only reason why organizations exist. There is really no other reason. We could say it's to make profit. We could say it's to make a value-added product or service. But at the end of the day, the only thing that keeps us going is that we have an advantage, that advantage is competitive, and that competitive advantage is sustainable. The graveyard is full of many organizations who did not heed that warning. I'm sure a number of you in the audience can remember Nokia. Nokia was with us for a long time. It's still around, but it's not the force it was. We had a situation where at one time just about everybody had a Nokia phone. Time moved on. They were developing. Yes, of course they were developing. They were investing in research and development, but little did they know they were going down the wrong track. And their market, which seemed to be completely unassailable at one time, came under attack. Not first of all by Apple, but first of all by the likes of BlackBerry. And BlackBerry didn't heed the warning at the same time as they were developing the market. If they'd looked over their shoulder, they would have seen that Apple was moving up. And Apple were revolutionizing the mobile phone and the way in which we operate. So that is a classic example of the VUCA world. Just to put it into more of a pictogram for you, this is what an organization faces in the modern business environment. This isn't something that happens every so often. This is something that happens every minute of the day. An organization is surrounded by these forces. And, okay, they present challenge, but at the same time, they present opportunity. But look at what these forces can bring to an organization. Looking back at economic factors and restructuring, it's still going on. We had a reunited Germany in the 1990s, which caused considerable upheaval in the European markets. It seems so long ago now. We had global recession, which came as a result of the 2008 banking and financial crisis. That was also then linked to the capital markets you see in the next box. We don't even know at this moment in time what the effects of the global pandemic of 2020 are going to be, or for how long those effects will be with us. We have an ever-changing labor market. We have a drive to reduce costs. We require higher skills, and yet we face skills shortages. Why does that happen? If you look over to the left-hand side of this model, you'll see that there's one of the reasons why: the demographics of the world. In the developed world, there is a much lower birth rate. People are waiting longer, for instance, until they have children in many countries. The result is we have an ever-aging population, which therefore means that the goods and services we provide have to change and adapt to service a different type of market. We have competition, where there's been an increase in tendering, there's been an increase in organic growth, and competitions and competitors and even ourselves have become highly acquisitive in a way to try and find growth, or to find, going back to what we originally said at the beginning, this web all over the world. National and transnational budgets are operated to. Interest rates affect not only the host country, but affect other countries. Employment law is becoming ever more complex. Our supplies, there are certain raw material scarcities. There's increasing demand, which therefore puts a strain on the supply. Ecology. Back in 1986, when the Montreal Protocol had been signed, which was the first ever treaty concerning what was believed to be a growing environmental problem, there has been a huge shift in emphasis for organizations to, for want of a better term, go green, to be environmentally friendly. This has had effects on us. In many cases, no one moved to deal with this environmental situation until national and international laws were put in place to force people into taking action and to acting responsibly as an organization. Our technology, as I started this webinar with, is growing at a phenomenal rate. In fact, it's often said, speed is speeding up, and it keeps speeding up. It means as well that our product life cycles are shorter. Our investment costs increase because we're constantly looking to the future. In the socio-cultural side of things, our employees now talk about their quality of life. They talk about work-life balance. They talk about what effects that has with their health. People have become far more health conscious, and people have become increasingly mobile. To look at this in terms of what the 21st century challenge is, it starts to look something like this. We're looking at an information explosion. We can gain more information in 30 minutes now using a mobile phone than most people could gain in an entire lifetime in the year 1900. It is truly phenomenal growth of information. We've got a convergence of digital, social, and mobile spheres going on. We've got a situation where we find our economies are becoming more integrated. The days of us operating on our own, thinking the world is beyond what we need to look at, have disappeared. Business value creation is the main key to sustainability. And we're only going to get that if we can innovate. And if we don't innovate, we'll vanish. Our project success is still largely elusive. An example of just how complex this can be. This source from The Economist in December 2015 showed a typical business week in the United States. 10 billion shares of America's top 500 listed companies will have changed hands. Their leaders will have been swamped by 750,000 incoming emails, plus a torrent of information and instant data about customers. In 5 days alone, they will have bought $11 billion of their own shares. Not far off what they have invested in their businesses. The unfortunate result of all this is that because of these pressures on an almost daily basis, the very thing that we need, long-term thinking and vision, which comes as a result of long-term thinking, could well have been put to one side and regarded as a luxury. So the fact is, we simply cannot afford just to manage. We have to lead, because with leadership comes vision. The global pandemic, as I've said, is with us, which is why we're all sat in front of our computers right now, and none of us are rating up the air miles on our favorite airline, getting from A to B. We are forced into a new way of working. It's just another change in our lives. Exactly what the long-term change will be, we simply don't know. But we do know that we have to survive as a business, as an organization, as an entity. There's been many views on some of these issues, particularly with regard to innovation, harnessing the ideas that people have, and making the most of the leadership potential of our employees. One of the sort of visionaries in this was Konosuke Matsushita, the head of Matsushita Electronics, which of course has such a famous brand name in Panasonic. Matsushita made these comments more than 30 years ago, and he made it to a Western audience of established business people. And it was really quite incredible what he came up with. He said, the first one, you firmly believe that sound management means executives on one side and workers on the other side. On one side, men who think, but on the other, men who can only work. For you, management is the art of smoothly transferring the executive's ideas into the workers' hands. Simply archaic, not true. So what did he believe was the answer? He went on to say, we are beyond this. Business as we know is so complex and difficult, the survival of organizations so hazardous in an environment increasingly unpredictable, competitive and fraught with danger, that their continued existence depends on their ability to constantly change through, and this is the crucial point, the mobilization of every single ounce of intelligence. The intelligence which we recruited and which we live with and work with on a daily basis inside our organization. What he was saying pretty much summed up in just one paragraph there, the Japanese approach to continuous improvement, for which they have, in the post-war period from 1945 up to now, become legendary in what they are capable of doing. They do, at every single level, mobilize every ounce of intelligence. Everyone has an idea, everyone has something to contribute, and everyone is part of the organization's success. So for them, management is not the answer. It is leadership. It is about delegation of authority. It is about empathy with people's ideas. And it is about listening. Oops, sorry. So we have, as I said, speed matters. Speed keeps speeding up. What we're facing now is that if we're going to be successful, if we're going to drive our organizations forward, it's going to be about inside actions, which should then provide us with a better opportunity for outside results. If we can have the ability to easily and quickly respond to constant change, then that ability becomes invaluable. We need, at the same time, to quickly understand ourselves. And this is where we start to move into the realms of organizational behavior and ultimately organizational development. So we have to understand ourselves and others so that our businesses and our teams can morph and change and adapt as needed into whatever new business environment comes at us. So thinking all our problems are out there, caused by other people and events, No, it's not true. This creates an enormous drag on both individuals and corporations because it leads to rumors, complaining and blaming, and fosters, in its turn, accountability gaps. It's not a long-term future for an organization. Where they need to invest time where they need to start is by investing time and energy where it will pay off exponentially. Subtle internal shifts that unleash huge leveraged changes out in the world. Change as a subject is not about revolutionary change. Revolutionary change, by and large, leads to chaos and anarchy. Change where it is most effective within an organization is step by step, incremental, small steps, embedded into the organization's culture so that the culture in itself starts to shift and change. So the 21st century is demanding of us as people within organizations to understand the behavior of the people within the organization and the organization as a whole, and then develop them through leadership. So these actions start with the individuals themselves who are willing to take the very first step. There's been many thoughts about innovation. There is no doubt about it. We've got famous people from the past, such as Steve Jobs. He made a big thing about innovation. He said it distinguishes between a leader and a follower. W. Edwards Deming, widely regarded as the father of modern day Japanese quality systems, also believed that innovation comes from the producer, not from the customer. There's even a link between these quotes. Jobs was well known for throwing out of the window the marketing rule book. The marketing rule book used to be pretty much the right product in the right place at the right time at the right price. Jobs didn't believe that. Jobs said, I'm not here to service people's needs. I'm here to create them. And that's what they did. That was truly innovative. So innovation and innovative thinking, creative thinking, is what's going to move us forward and our people forward. So organizational behavior, its challenges and requirements. Oops. What exactly is it? Organizational behavior as a terminology is a title most definitely from the 21st century. Many, many years ago, and I can certainly remember when I started off working after university, organizations would have a personnel department. There would even be a training department, which, believe it or not, was actually separate in some cases from the personnel department. Then along in the late 1980s came this term human resource management and human resource development. So personnel and training came together. We ended up with one department. A better title, definitely, but we're talking about people being a resource, not people, not individuals. Then the title sort of changed again and we ended up with human capital. I'm not sure I prefer that one any better than the previous one. But this goes far beyond human resource, human capital, personnel, training. Before all of those issues, all of those areas are talking about systems, processes, and procedures. There's a step long before that, and that is the behavior of the organization itself. And what makes that behavior? Yes, there's a variety of things. It can be the culture of the organization, which by and large, and in many cases, is created and developed and driven by the organization's leader or top management. But it's also about the behavior of the individuals and the groups of individuals and the teams of individuals within the organization, which ultimately determine what the overall behavior of the organization is. Without understanding how we all interact with each other, how we operate, how we work, we cannot hope to put in place the right systems, processes, and procedures. What comes before anything systematic is the culture of the organization and the culture of the people within that organization. And that is why organizational behavior has become one of the growth study subjects of the last 20 years, and is now, in many cases, a standard module within many university-offered MBA study programs. Why is it important? Organizations, quite simply, are social systems. They're structured and managed to meet a need or pursue a collective goal. They are therefore a combination of humanity mixed with technology. So organizational behavior is a field of study that investigates the impact that the individuals, the groups, and structures have on behavior within the organizations for the purpose of applying such knowledge toward improving an organization's effectiveness. And so you see here for the first time why it is important in terms of getting the right type of leadership within an organization. There is a direct link between organizational behavior and leadership. So organizational behavior is a human tool for human benefit. It is the first stage and the most important stage in getting the most out of your people. Systems and processes and procedures only formalize that process. That's it. It is far more, therefore, than human resource management. What does it consist of? Well, people, as I said, and down there at number 8, as I also said in the previous slide, technology. But it includes values. People have values. An organization has values. It's about culture. Culture of the individuals, culture of the organization. Even we've seen so many times when we look within our own organizations that two teams are never the same in their behavior. Behavior changes according sometimes to the section of the organization in which you work. There's often a very different type of behavior that takes place in a marketing department compared to what takes place in a finance department. So people's culture is different, even within the same organization. It's about style, how people express themselves, how teams express themselves. It's about perceptions. Now, perceptions are quite dangerous things at times. They can be largely inaccurate, and they're based very often on something visual which doesn't tell them the whole story. It's about learning capacities. Everyone has different speeds of learning, and everyone has different capacities of learning. The environment itself in which we operate, the structures which are supposed to harness this incredible resource that we have within our organizations. And then last but not least, the actions. So building it up quite simply, we have to start with the individual. We have to look then towards the group or the team, and then and only then do we get a clearer picture of what actually makes up the organization itself. It's widely believed that there's around 5 models of organizational behavior. Now, this is what you would be told in academic study. My personal experience over the years is that these models are not usually exclusive to one another. They're often a little bit more fuzzy. They intertwine with each other. You'll see different sort of characteristics from one model entering another model. For instance, a supportive model of organizational behavior very often has similarities and links in with a collegial model, where there's sort of group decision making as well. An autocratic model has to exist in some form and at some time within an organization. Why? Because organizations are not democracies. You do not run a democracy in an organization. It cannot be one man, one vote. If we were to try and run a democracy in an organization, we would never get anything done. At the end of the day, someone has to make the decisions, or someone is ultimately held accountable or responsible for the performance of the organization. And so a form of autocracy has to take place. So it's a little unfair to put it in such a stark format as that the 5 models are quite distinct. It's not as simple as that. The challenges, therefore, facing organizational behavior are immense. This is just a few. This is not an exclusive list. This is certainly not exhaustive. There's many more. These are the main ones. Technology has helped us, as I've said, enormously, but it has also presented us with significant challenges. Our systems and procedures, change is still one of the single most important tests of an organization's capability to move forward and to be sustainable. It's often regarded and said to be the ultimate test of leadership. So personalities come into it, diversity, different cultures within our organization comes into it, style, skills, work flexibility, the way that we communicate, and of course leadership, innovation, quality, performance, organizational culture, social environment, globalization, performance, life balance, empowerment and engagement, and ethical behavior, another one of the growth areas of thinking in the 21st century. So you start to see through this list and through the models that I've shown you earlier on the modern business environment, just how complex a world we now live in. The types of behavior change quite dramatically within organizations. There's obviously an element of task performance. That is the very reason why we are employed in organizations. There's organizational citizenship. That is basically where you are being the good citizen of that organization. You are doing the right thing, you are behaving the right way, and you are contributing. But there are also counterproductive behaviors. We've all seen it, we know it exists. There is always someone who does not hold the same standards of organizational citizenship. There are people who sometimes will do anything to escape from doing what they are supposed to do. And there are those who, no matter how much we try, they are willing to let someone else use their initiative. This is all counterproductive, and it slows down the progress of the organization. We have joining an organization, we have staying with an organization, and loyalty comes into this as well. We often regard maintaining work attendance as a good measure of sound organizational behavior. But of course, technology has shown, and as we're doing now with this webinar, that we don't necessarily need to be sat at our desk inside the organization in which we work. Organization at the top. Your organization has its purpose, its objectives, and it has its values. Somewhere in the middle is the behaviors, the performance, the mindsets, the clarity, the perceptions, the philosophy and the core beliefs and core values of the organization, and of the individuals, the personal values of the individuals. Then you've got the emotional climate, the relationship management that goes on between people within the organization, what information they're getting as well. And underpinning it all is the actual history, not just of the organization, possibly even of the country in which the organization is based. So culture, again, the same, of the organization and of the people itself. The experience of those people and the organization, the successes, possibly even the failures, hopefully from which they have learned something. Their own story, their own journey that they've had, all add to the overall culture of the organization. So it's important for us, not just in terms of an academic study, it's important for us as actual practices of management and leadership. We have to take a closer look at organizational behavior if we're going to develop the organization. So it goes far beyond human resource management, which is the formalization, as I've said, of the systems and procedures. So it gives us a roadmap to the lives within our organization. Our organization is a living entity. And you can take and look at the people within the organization as being almost the cells within a human body of a living organism. Those cells are what makes the organization thrive. Use scientific research to understand and predict organizational life. It helps us in accomplishing personal and organizational objectives. It helps us improve organizational events. It helps us as an individual to better understand themselves and others. It helps in motivating people to get better results. It's useful for ensuring that we can maintain pleasant and workable and professional relationships with our colleagues. It helps in developing our careers. Of that, there is no doubt. It helps in equipping management and staff for development and growth. And last but not least, it helps us to deal with the consequences of misunderstandings between employees, which can and do and will continue to happen. Why? Because it's human nature. Not everyone is the same and not everyone thinks the same. So there's always going to be differences. So to get from organizational behavior to actual organizational development, we have to address those challenges. We have to look and know individual personalities, perceptions, and motivation. This is where, of course, the art of psychometric testing came in, which was started around the 1950s and took hold within the business world in the 1980s and 1990s, giving us a tool with an ability to try and evaluate people's personalities and their drive and their perceptions and what motivates them. Secondly, organizational interactions through leadership teams. Leadership teams, communication, decision-making, and effective conflict resolution. And of course, we do need formal systems and structures, but only after we have begun to understand what our people are about. We need, ultimately, human resource development and learning. That is a component of organizational development. There will also be within organizations informal systems and dynamics. Some people from different teams will know each other better than they will know others. So informal groups, informal systems, informal teams always appear within organizations. They are important. They're part of the fabric and of the motivation of that organization. So we have to look at things like the dynamics, such as culture, power, influence, politics, relationship, and trust of those people within the organization. And we must address these 5 areas if we're going to move the organization forward and develop it. So now, how does all this link through to leadership? It's a bold title, The Need for Leadership, Not Management. But as I hope I've explained with the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity, and the forces and challenges that are facing organizations on an almost daily basis, and who knows what the next challenge is going to be, we cannot just manage anymore. But we do need managers. The question is, can we turn managers into leaders? If we look at the world and we look at our leaders of organizations, unless that person at the top of the organization started the company, it was their child, if you like, it was their invention, then all of us at one time or another, if we're going to progress to leadership of an organization, must have been a manager at some point. So what was it about us that took us from a purely management position to a position of leadership? And the chances are it's one of a number of different things, such as initiative, innovation, drive, charisma. The list is endless. All leadership features. But we do know that the word manage means to manage, to maintain. We cannot maintain anymore. We will, as you saw on one of the previous slides in this webinar, we will innovate or we will vanish as an organization. Oh, sorry, just a minute. The webinar has frozen. The webinar has frozen. Oh, we're there. Sorry. Okay, my apologies for that. Let's see if that moves on. No, it's sticking again. I do apologize. Vlatko, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, the slide presentation has frozen. Just a minute, let me try it again. No, it seems to have frozen. Oh.
You can try turn it
Whoa.
on again. On again.
Right. We're back. I don't know what I did. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Right. I have no idea what happened there. I do apologize to everyone. Such are the challenges of technology, as we've just been discussing. So leadership versus management. It's not about having one or the other. It's about having both. Cotter said in 1990, you'll see there, that leadership and management are two distinctive and complementary systems of action. Each has its own function and characteristic activities. Yep. Both are necessary for success in an increasingly complex and volatile environment. My goodness, he said this 30 years ago. And look at where we are now. The fact is, where I believe he was wrong, is that they're not, in a way, separate and distinctive. They now have to clearly be merged into one. Our managers have got to be leaders. We can find why not? Exactly, they can be found at every single level of an organization. The ability to lead should be present. It's a question of, can we extract that information, that ability, and put it to good use? So what is the difference? There's many, many differences between leadership and management if you're going to compartmentalize them both. Leadership is undoubtedly the ability to influence a group toward the achievement of goals. It's not about giving orders. It's about persuasion. It's about influence. It's about winning hearts and minds. Management is very often the use of authority that is inherent in a designated formal rank, a position within an organization, to obtain compliance from the organizational members. The days of us just issuing orders are gone. It's not enough. We need to be more inclusive. There are some quite stark differences between leadership and management. Leaders are known to innovate. Managers are known to implement. Leaders like to originate. Managers are expected to copy that and then, of course, implement it. Leaders develop. Managers, as the title suggests, maintain. Leaders are supposed to inspire trust, and this is one of the key success factors. Can they inspire and can they gain people's trust? Management is very much, because it is a formal rank, it is very much about a command and control model. So leaders tend to think longer term. Managers tend to think shorter term. Why? Because their goals are often set in the shorter term. Leaders watch the horizon. This is where the vision comes in. A good leader will see beyond the horizon. They will have a feeling, a sense, an idea of what is coming and when and why it is coming. And that could even be a change in the marketplace and the needs and wants of their clients. Whereas, but managers will ask how and when. It's a system. Leaders will challenge the status quo, the way things are at this moment. They will push the boundaries to see what is the next thing they should be doing, or can they do something better? Managers accept the status quo because that it is what's written down in that designated position. Leaders are very much their own soldiers, their own people. Managers are good soldiers. In fact, if we're going to look at it like this, it's almost like a military analogy. Our leaders, the generals, and our managers, the soldiers. It looks that way, and from what I've seen and my experience has seen of this over the years, is it is very much like the military model. That doesn't mean that the soldiers do not think. Of course they do. They have to think. So it's about harnessing that thinking and getting people to show that same promise of leadership. But in very simple terms, this comment by Peter Drucker, which is the bottom of these columns, is the one which I think sums it up for me the best. Management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. It's very, very subtle as a difference. If we look at it more now in this way, you see what I'm trying to get at with regard to management being more of a system or a structure, and leadership is less of a title. It is more about flexibility and adaptability, pragmatism. So management is very much a function. Leadership does not see it as a function, it sees it as a relationship. Management is about planning. Leadership is about selecting talent, the people who will drive the company forward. Management has to be about budgeting. Leadership is about motivating and inspiring people. Management is about evaluating. Leadership is not about evaluating. Leadership is about coaching. Leadership is about guiding, mentoring, giving the right conditions and the right encouragement for people to grow. Management, last but not least, is facilitating. Leadership is about building trust. And trust is very, very important in organizations. We know it is. We know it is in our own lives, our own personal lives. The basis of all relationships which are successful is trust. And leaders, their main priority is to build trust amongst people. So what exactly is leadership? You can break it down into these areas, which give you a very good idea of what is the actual competency that a leader needs to have. The definition of leadership: influence, most definitely. Like I said, it's not about giving an order. The key to leadership: priorities, prioritization, knowing what comes first, what comes second, what comes third. The most important ingredient of leadership: integrity. A leader without integrity is not a leader. And a leader without integrity lacks the trust and therefore the confidence of the people that they are supposed to be leading. So there's only one way that is going to end. The ultimate test of leadership, as I said earlier: change. It's never going to stop. It's going to keep happening. It's going to keep moving. And even if you try to stand still, you will not do it for long. It will move forward. So change is all around us, and life will keep. It's often said jokingly, the only constant in life is change. The quickest way to gain leadership, if there is truly such a thing, it's problem solving. And with problem solving, of course, also comes judgment. So very, very important component of leadership. The extra plus in leadership: attitude, most definitely. It has been said that it is your attitude, not your aptitude, which will determine your altitude in life. It's a very, very good quote, and it's very true. Attitude means everything, and positive attitude is what everyone needs to have. The most appreciable asset, developing them: people. The indispensable quality of leadership: vision. The ability to look beyond the horizon. The ability as well to think laterally, not vertically. The ability to have an impression, a feeling of where the organization can go, what its capabilities are, and to find what is missing. So vision is everything. The price tag of leadership is self-discipline. It's been said that there's such a wonderful term as the loneliness of leadership. But it doesn't stop people moving into that position. Why? Because they want the challenge. Why? Because they want to make a difference. But self-discipline is crucial to a successful leadership style. And the most important lesson of leadership: staff development. You fail to develop your staff, then you prepare the organization to fail. So some thoughts on it. Consider the following. Positional power does not make you a leader. It makes you a boss. I hate the title boss. I can't imagine why anybody would want to be called the boss. It has such a negative connotation around it. And it does suggest, through its very name, positional power. Leaders don't think about power. They only think about power when they're no longer a leader and they no longer have it. Good leaders don't realize exactly how much power they have until they no longer have it. So it's not a value, it's not a skill, and it is not a tool or a weapon. It gives you authority, but not authority to abuse it. So never ever equate leadership with a title. It isn't. It has nothing to do with a title. And that's why I said as well that leadership thinking should not be confined to the upper levels of an organization. The most highly effective organizations in the world today are those where there are leaders at every single level of that organization. And they're being listened to and they're being involved. Make sure you appear as you speak. No hidden agendas. What you see is what you get. Shouting never achieved anything. Good leaders do not shout. They don't insult people. They don't name call people. They do what they do and they get what they get through influence and persuasion, not through commands, controls, temper tantrums and shouting. Leading through fear and anger is not leading. That's people doing what you want because they have to, out of fear. You want people to do what they do because they want to, that they actually want to turn up every day and they want to be there. As a leader, you go first. Absolutely. One of my inspirational leaders is Nelson Mandela. And Mandela once said that a leader should be at the front of his people when there is danger or when there is a challenge, but should be at the back of their people when it is time for the people to celebrate. In other words, it's not about you, it's about them. And a leader is selfless. They will give that up and move out of sight when it's time to celebrate. But you will go first if there is a challenge and if there is danger. Each day, you will either get better or worse because nothing ever stays the same. And you're only as good as you were yesterday. Each day is a challenge. So the best advice I can give you on that is get out of the way of your team. Let them get on with it. Trust them. Delegate. Understand their capabilities. Give them the chance to shine. They will repay you. So why does it matter? Why does exceptional leadership matter? Quite simply, it helps to motivate and grow employees. And I probably should have put the word inspire in here again. As it says, a manager says go, a leader says let's go. It's quite different. So we want our employees to grow into better people and therefore better employees. So leadership, as we said, is not about giving orders. It's about encouraging employees to submit new ideas, to learn new skills. Great leaders always encourage the teams within the organization to be stronger and more unified and make sure all employees are working well together. So one thing which makes a great leader great is that they want you to grow into a better person and therefore a better employee. What they're doing by doing this is they're actually preparing the next generation of leadership for the organization, or maybe even ultimately for someone else's organization. Leaders should not be about how many followers they've got. The true test of leadership in that respect is, does a leader create leaders, not followers? You don't want people to act like sheep following you. They're not going to be able to look after themselves. You want to inspire them. You want to bring out the best of them, and you want to turn them into leaders. So great leaders produce more leaders, and they're not afraid of them. Too many people are afraid of developing people because they think then they become a threat. They only become a threat if you're not capable of moving on and developing yourself. Leaders are not afraid of the next generation of leaders. They actually help them get there. That's the challenge which we face. So they actually serve, therefore, to move the business forward. And for that, there has to be this ability for vision. It's not about how, what, where, when, why, who. It's about what if. Leaders constantly ask, what if? They're looking at something and thinking, is there a better way of doing it? Or is there something we haven't thought of? It's a different type of questioning that goes off within the mind. Yes, it can be taught. This isn't something that is necessarily inherited. I personally am one of those people who do not believe the age-old comment of that person is a born leader. There is nothing that proves that. There is no medical proof. There is no proof whatsoever that people are natural born leaders. There is everything to prove that our life experiences and the environment in which we grew are what determine what we can be and what our attitude is to what we can be. So leadership most definitely can be taught. If it couldn't, there's absolutely no point whatsoever in sitting and listening to this webinar, going on leadership training courses, or even going to these motivational speakers who tell you wonderful things about how to develop your attitude and positivity. It can be taught. There is no doubt. And the Japanese are very much, with their experiences of organizational development and the development of the leadership of their companies in the post-war, very highly successful post-war period, are living proof that leadership can be taught and that it can be found in every single level of the organization. So it's all about moving the business forward. So they know when to say yes, they know when to say no, and they know how to move towards the goal. Bad leaders are usually very focused on the short term. They don't have the vision. They're not looking long term. Great leaders also create loyal customers. We know how important that actually is. Usually when we discuss leaders, it's how they affect internal culture. But no, great leaders indirectly create loyal customers by creating an environment for employees to shine. And people get to know those companies. We all got to know the face of Steve Jobs. We all got to know the face of Bill Gates. We've seen the face of Richard Branson at Virgin, Elon Musk at Tesla. We know all of these people. Jeff Bezos at Amazon. They have this great ability to create loyalty, not just within their own employees, but amongst their customers. And it is a constant attention to vision. And what if? What could be next? So a great leader understands transparency, collaboration, sharing of ideas. They will create a culture for employees which will ultimately please the customer. And if we please the customer and we keep pleasing the customer, then we have achieved what I started with, sustainable competitive advantage. They create passionate brand ambassadors as well. Because in these organizations where you get these type of leaders, the people become very, very passionate about where they work, who they work for, and they're very happy to talk outside the company about how great the company is. It's powerful word of mouth marketing that employees gladly will do for free. So they become passionate about the brand because they can feel they in turn can feel the leader's passion. It becomes infectious. So all a leader needs to do is create the environment for this to happen. The rest should, all things being equal, take care of itself. So we've seen this particularly with the new technology companies, but we've also seen it with some of the more traditional companies and some of the older companies. Great examples of that are organizations such as BMW, where there is a real sense of pride amongst the employees to be working with that company. They don't feel that they work for that company. They feel they are the company. That's the difference. So, and I said as well, last but not least, they inspire other leaders to be great. Everyone wants to be a great leader since they know that it's a really important trait to have for their business. So it inspires others to attain those heights and those capabilities. So it's not something you can fake, and it's not something you can learn overnight. And I would repeat again that I don't think it is something that you are necessarily born with. Can't prove that people are born with it. I can't disprove that people are not born with it. But I do know that it can be taught. So what does all this result in? It creates a climate and culture in which good people thrive. They want to come to work. They have confidence in each other's skills and abilities, which builds trust. They believe they can count on one another, and they do. They hold each other to high performance standards. They listen to one another's ideas and opinions. They make it a point to publicly celebrate other employees' contributions and achievements. And this is very important. They are comfortable admitting failure and mistakes. There is absolutely nothing wrong with making a mistake. And a good leader will have made mistakes, and they will have learned from those mistakes. They will encourage people not to hide their mistakes, but to be open about it. And what did they learn from it? So they're open to ideas and suggestions from employees at every level for improving products. They're not afraid to ask. They do not believe that this is just the domain of responsibility of people at the very top of the organization. It isn't. They honor agreements and commitments they make to each other in whether it's a small matter or whether it's a very large matter. It's important. Their word is their bond. They provide each other and, of course, you with honest feedback, confident that they won't suffer recrimination for it. So how does it feel, this type of leadership? Well, if employees act as if their own success is linked to that of the organization, then voila, you have got a process throughout the organization where people are positive, where their interest levels are extremely high, and they are deeply involved in the success of the organization. And that, at the end of the day, equates to excellent leadership. Now, leaders serve. It's a good model, this one. The S stands for the fact that they see and shape the future. They very often do. They engage and develop others. They reinvent continuously. And by that, I mean they are creative. If we can get our employees and our people to think this way and to constantly think about what is a better way forward. The Japanese achieved this many, many years ago with their development of not just their continuous improvement techniques, but their quality systems throughout their organizations. The development of the quality control circle with Japanese industry was a brilliant way to harness the ideas and views of the people who were closest to the issue or the problem, and allowing them to take corrective action and decisions in order for the organization to be more efficient. So it can be done at every single level again. Value, results, and relationships. They're both important. At the end of the day, we're judged by our results, but our results may well depend on how good our relationships are with our colleagues. And a leader, above all, embodies the values that they believe in. They do not deviate from their values. Yes, they're pragmatic. Yes, they will adapt. Yes, they're flexible. But values don't change. Values have grown up with you from your environment, from your family, from your friends, from people who have influenced you. And so a good leader does not drift away from what they believe in. So everything rises and falls on leadership. Personnel will determine the potential of the organization. Relationships will determine the morale. Structure will determine the size. Vision will determine the direction. But leadership, above all, will determine the success of the organization. Now, let's look at the vision, the direction, performance, change, and culture through leadership. Leadership is all about vision, as I've been saying earlier. It is, as it says here, the capacity to translate vision into reality is the actual leadership component itself. Can they stir people into having the same vision or creating a vision for the organization? There's many different views on leadership vision. Once again, here is Mr. Jobs talking, if you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. That's very true. Over there on the right-hand side, top right, Jack Welch, one of the great leaders of our time, who was CEO and president of General Electric. Good business leaders create a vision, articulate the vision, passionately own the vision, and relentlessly drive it to completion. And it goes on and on. I could give you slide after slide on leadership and vision. Why is vision important? Well, it's how we want to work together. It's what do we stand for as a team? And it's what do we want to achieve? Three crucial questions. It gives us a clear sense of what the company is and where it wants to be. A sharper focus on what is strategically important to us. And an improved understanding of a rapidly changing environment. But vision also equals change. If something is going forward, the chances are something is going to change. So we have to be ready for this. Vision should lead to action. Action should lead to impact. Impact should lead to connection, and connection should lead to drive. But there will be change within this, and we have to be ready for it. And that, as I said, is regarded very often as the ultimate test of leadership. Change leadership. Well, belief equals the approach, as it's said. For anything to happen, there has to be belief, or the change will not happen. So you look at some of these things. I trust my people to solve things with us. I can only create the conditions to change, for change to happen. Launch enough and something will stick. Not quite the way. I can manage change, a more directive approach. Belief is what will make change happen. A half-hearted belief, and the chances are the change will fall flat and the vision will not be achieved. Leadership, as I said a little earlier in this webinar, is strongly linked to culture. By and large, and in most cases, the culture of an organization is very much determined by the leadership of the organization. So that culture has to equal performance. But if the culture is wrong, then you have got non-performance, and effectively you've got bad leadership. But if everything is right, the leadership will create a positive culture, and the positive culture will in turn have a positive effect on performance. Culture and leadership are completely intertwined. It becomes the very soul of the organization, the very purpose of why it exists. You've seen this so many times with organizations throughout business history. You can go all the way to the modern day with people like Elon Musk and Jobs, who have this sort of driving passion, which gave their companies a real purpose and a soul and a heartbeat. But it's not the province of the new technology industries alone. If you go back 100 years and you go back to the world's first production assembly line, which was Ford in Detroit, and brought about by Henry Ford's vision. Ford had a passion. He had a belief. His passion, his driving vision was that he wanted every American to be able to afford a car. It was as simple as that. And he changed the way of thinking completely. It's not a domain of these new companies alone. It's the same story every single time. There is a leader with a culture of drive, innovation, creativity, and a determination to move things forward. So a good ecosystem of leadership culture would be empowerment and autonomy, communication and transparency, creativity and innovation, and a sense of community and connection being created. We've all seen that as well, haven't we, with Google, for instance. People laugh when they see the Google office, but it's wonderful to watch that there is this almost playful approach to the serious art of business. And these types of companies, they don't just want to win. They want to win whilst having fun. And that's the wonderful thing about them. And they've adapted so much from the traditions of the past. So what are these companies, what do they look like now with this type of leadership? Because this is what's driving the economies of the world now. It's been called the new culture of XYZ, as our American friends would call it. It provides a passion for growth and change. The organization has a passion to be first and different. Innovation is a core competency and is expected every single day. They have intense curiosity, always seeking the boundary of what is possible. A passion for constant learning. They never stop learning. They know there is more for them to go out there and learn. They don't just encourage new ideas. It's absolutely expected that new ideas will bubble up from just about anywhere. And as I just said, they want to have fun whilst winning. They're very, very good at trend finding and trend extrapolation. What's the latest fashion? What's the latest fad, if you like, of what people are wanting to do? They have exceptional foresight. They have this capability to anticipate emerging needs and then to innovate around what that need may be. They have an entrepreneurial spirit. They take risks, but the risks are considered and measured. And there's constant experimentation. And they actually celebrate failure because they want to fail intelligently. In other words, they want to learn and they want to fail fast. They want to get it over and done with and move on. But it won't impede or hinder their creativity. They have a respect for people's minds as their most important assets. And that is crucial. This is going back to what we said with regard to organizational development. Allowing innovative strategy, as I said, to bubble up from anywhere. Everyone makes the strategy. And in organizations and in businesses particularly, strategy seems to be the domain of a select few. And yet very often that select few are the ones who are often the furthest away from the customer or from the marketplace, or they could be the furthest ones away from the actual production of the product or the design of the service. What has been shown very clearly to us over the years, particularly from our colleagues in the Far East, is that the best people to make these suggestions and ideas are the ones who are closest to the issues. So we're looking at these new age companies now where everyone makes the strategy. Everyone is part of it. Oh yes, at the end of the day, a strategy has to be finalized and someone has to take a decision. And that is, of course, in the executive level of the organization. But what these companies are doing is they're actively encouraging everybody's participation in it. They're harnessing the ideas. They're creating the environment in which people's imagination can thrive. And then they encapsulate and capture those views. And as a result, they capture people's loyalty. People actually feel part of the organization. They were involved. They don't work for it, they work with it. So they empower people to act. There has to be clear responsibility and accountability, we know that. A richly rewarding successful entrepreneurs, minimum hierarchy and bureaucracy, less titles, more action. Persistence, perseverance, and consistency of direction. They will not be knocked off track. Focused planning, careful initiative, and selection and prioritization. And execution of only as many initiatives as can be supported by the available resources. So what does it mean? This has become one of the great success stories of these companies and how effective their leadership is. They don't have to go out and find people. People go out and find them. They want to become the employer of choice. They want people knocking on their door, and they do. That with a smaller labour market, with skills in short demand, in demand, but in short supply, means you want to have a label on your company, and that company is an employer of choice. People want to work there. If you're a learning organization as well, that you're investing in people, that you're innovative and flexible, and that you're prepared to jump to new frontiers of activity, again, people will want to be part of that success. It also creates a feeling of an organization being more directed by the mission, not by the problem. Our age-old problem within organizations has been that we don't seem to have time to do things because there's a problem, or there is always a problem. It doesn't happen with these organizations. Problems do arise and they are dealt with, but the company never gets distracted from what its original mission is. So it's looking at creating the new, even when it comes to problem solving. As Einstein said, quite rightly, the definition of insanity is trying to solve a problem by using the same thinking which created the problem in the first place. So it's not about repairing the old, it's about creating the new. And they look for possible futures rather than prospective futures. In other words, they're looking to create it. In other words, should be, not will be. But above all, yes, like any other organization, the return on investment has to be driven for both our customers and ourselves. So the modern performance imperative that we're with now, as we've seen with all these factors which are coming at organizations and at leadership, is that there's fewer inputs coming into things, decreasing resources. We're being asked to do more with less. So if we're being asked to do more with less, then it surely cannot be business as usual. It has to be about creativity and innovation, not about maintaining. So managers need to manage themselves. Managers need to support others. Managers need to develop and improve the organizational and environmental awareness. And managers, last but by no means least, have to transform into leaders. We need people to drive an organization forward. We need a high performance organization operating model where the structure is right, the process is clear, culture is positive, and it empowers people, and the people have been empowered. They have the talent, they have the ability, they have the knowledge, and when they're successful, they will have the rewards. So finally, let's have a look at transformational leadership and organizational development. To get companies to this stage, we need the right type of leadership. And that leadership has to be transformational. It has to deploy the things we've been talking about, understanding the behavior of the organization, be prepared to embrace and drive, well, actually to even initiate the change in the first place, but to inspire people to go with them and to create this new culture within an organization. So we need individual and organization characteristics have to be addressed. The culture, the individual behaviors and personalities, people's individual life experiences. You mold this then with the leader, with the behaviors of the leader. Are they inspirational, motivational? Are they idealized? Do they have the right attributes? Do they give consideration to people? Are they intellectually stimulating as well? Then the leader is identified. The internal motivation increases with achievement and orientation and goal pursuit. Increased collaboration of groups and teams within the organization. The outcomes then should be obvious. We get the results, and we get the results through increased organizational commitment, increased commitment to the leader and the vision, and the altruism of the whole organization. So the four key components of transformational leadership are: we've got to have the stimulation. Something intellectually has got to stimulate us to move a company forward and to develop the organization. We have to therefore focus in on the individuals within the organization, the people. We have to then provide them with an ideal, a way of influencing them towards a better future. And hopefully that inspires the motivation to take the organization forward. And these are all the responsibility of the leadership of an organization. So with organizational development, then, leadership has to be the starting point. The two are inextricably linked, and they can't work without each other. But at some point, there is no doubt about it, that once the diagnosis is done, once we're aware of where the organization is, and we're going to make the interventions and the plans for the type of development of the organization we want, then the natural consequence of that will be change. And that has to be handled. We want leadership in terms of the models. We want it in terms of the style. That then will affect the organizational climate, and in turn, it will determine what the organizational effectiveness is. And it all comes together by setting the stage, gathering the data, designing the transformation, implementing and evaluating, and feeding in is the organizational design, the business climate, the market, the industry changes, the business acquisitions, the business divestitures, the people, the communication, the motivation, the resources, and the technology. So finally, for organizational development, the requirements for success are the leadership, as we said, the ability through leadership to create relationship. The structures have to then be put in place. The purpose of the organization has to be clear. The mechanisms to deliver also developed. And then the rewards for all concerned. And that is the wheel or circle, if we like, of organization development. So some tips for success in organizational development. It is, as I said and keep saying, it is much more than human resource management. It is not about systems and processes. It is about people. It requires effective and constant communication. And you have to embrace and lead change and acknowledge and deal with its impact regularly. And by that, you've got to listen to concerns, you've got to listen to fears, and you've got to engage and empower people. Last but not least, you've got to reward and you've got to recognize people. That means everything to everyone. Finally, lead, not manage. The result If we get it right, well, hopefully we've got a super awesome leader who is capable of getting people to communicate better, to create a better working environment, an enriched culture within the organization, better leaders at all levels, well, even finding the leaders at all levels, showing results, and a constant cycle of innovation and creativity. It sounds like an ideal world, doesn't it? Is it easy? No, it's not. Not at all. It takes a lot of work, a lot of concentration, and a lot of focus. But can it be done? Of course it can. There are examples of it having been done. Very successful companies with great products, great leadership, great people. And they recognize their people as their greatest single asset. And that pretty much is how an organization needs to behave and develop and be led in the 21st century, by way of an introduction. If you want to know more, please, by all means, visit LEORON, www.leoron.com. Two particular courses in mind: the International Certificate in Advanced Leadership Skills, known as the ICAL certificate, which is certified by the International Academy of Business and Financial Management in the United States, and the Certified Program in Organizational Behavior and Development and Management, which is certified by London School of Business and Finance, both of which I am happy to say I present. So with that, thank you. And if anybody has any questions, then I'm willing to answer them. Otherwise, thank you for attending, and I hope it was useful for you, and hope to see you and meet you someday on one of the courses.
Thanks,
Thank
Nigel.
you.
I believe we have a number of questions here from our participants. You can check them out and answer.
Where are the questions?
Yeah, on the questions part there, in the control panel.
I'm just starting to get down some of these now, but I'm having a, where is it? Let me just get back to this. Okay. Oh, what's happening here? No. Okay, this is from, I think the first one I've got here is from Amal Al-Raidan. In your opinion, how can we avoid the current situation's side effects once life goes back on track? Oh, I wish I knew, Amal. I really do wish I knew. I think we're all learning as we go along here at the moment. It's we're in unknown territory. I don't think anyone knows exactly how this is going to pan out. What we are hearing is that people are going to have to change the way that they work. And the way you said, when once life goes back on track, maybe it's going to be a different track. Who knows if we're all going to work the way we did before? The side effects that we go through at the moment with this, I generally try to be a positive person. I would be lying to you, I would be dishonest if I said that I myself do not have moments when I find this very, very challenging at the moment. And it does have a side effect on you. I can well understand why some people can get depressed. I can understand how some people can get frustrated, and I can understand how some people have become angry. You want to know my own particular tip? I try to vary my day as much as I possibly can. By that, there are certain things that I do which have to be done. For your own state of mind, I will walk a minimum of 5-6 kilometers a day. I exercise and meditate and do and concentrate on my breathing by practicing Tai Chi. You can actually download Tai Chi sessions off. You can see them on Google. You can download them. So you can see them on YouTube, and you can download them off Google. I read an awful lot. I never want to stop learning. And then after all of that, I then probably get back on my mountain bike, and I probably do about another 10 kilometers. It's really about keeping yourself going. It's about variety. Now, I realize not every person is allowed out of their house. We've got slightly different restrictions here, but reading, planning, working, exercising within the confines of your own home, all of these things, I would recommend. I hope that helps. Now, how do we recover previous investment losses after the crisis? Well, I'm I'm not an investment specialist, but I'm not being. I don't think I'm being too much of an optimist, but I certainly do believe that when this is over, whenever that is, there will be a resurgence in the market. There will be demand. It will pick up quickly. Exactly what toll that has taken, we won't know. For instance, what is the effect going to be on airlines and how they operate is one of the big unanswered questions going forward. But it will be what's called first to the future. They are the ones who will recover. And they are the ones who will recover their previous investments, and they are the ones who will get the next set of investments, the ones who innovate, the ones who show the ability to be creative and to develop their organization. It's as simple as that. What that is, I don't know. I don't work in their companies. But there always will be people who will come along, and there will be new products, new services. The world goes on. That is how previous investment losses will be recovered. How long will it take? A long time. That I'm certain of. It will take a long time. And by that, well, we hadn't recovered, all of us, properly from the 2008 banking crisis 10 years later. The losses are bigger, and the interruption is bigger than the 2008 banking crisis. So it's difficult to tell. Now, what do we have? What's this one? What from leadership can we apply? Rafael Villalobos. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, Rafael. What from leadership can we apply? You can't. Obviously, everything that I could show you about leadership, not everyone has it. In fact, if everybody did have all the things we talk about on great leadership, then we'd be talking about Superman. We wouldn't be talking about running an organization. No one has everything. But if you didn't apply anything else, then the one thing I would recommend that you always try to do is, when you are dealing with something, try to think what if. Don't think what, how, when, where, who, and what. Try and go with what if. What if we did this differently? What if we went that way? What if we went this way? Always use the imagination. From imagination will come creativity. It will come innovation. And what you always have to do with leadership is inspire. That doesn't take great speeches. Like I said, it doesn't take raising your voice, you are believable, that you have a vision. That you have, so look at it that way. Amal, again, you have mentioned part of the challenges we face is culture. How can culture be changed when we have many cultures in one organization? Yes, indeed. We do indeed. What we're talking about is it doesn't matter if you've got a multicultural environment within an organization. That multicultural environment or diversity within the organization is what actually makes the components of the organization's culture. It's almost like a recipe, if you like. It's like the cooking ingredients of what you're putting into the pot. And it's from that that you can create it. For instance, look at the United States of America. The United States of America was built on immigration. You could not have populated a land that size without immigration. So the doors were opened and the people filed in. They came from Ireland, they came from Britain, they came from Italy, they came from everywhere. Today, they come from hundreds of different cultures, but they create largely one culture. An organization has to act in the same way. Multinational corporations operate across borders, across many different nations. And in those many different nations, they've got many different cultures, but they create from those people one organizational culture. So what is the culture of the organization? That's what you have to decide. Okay, what's this one? Ezzedine Dradi, kindly advise about good references, books on organizational behavior. I can indeed. I can help you with that one immediately. Please bear with me. This is the great thing of being next to my business library whilst being at home. There are two very, very good books on organizational behavior. The first one is Organizational Behavior by Huksinski and Buchanan, if you can see this one. This, again, is another one of the standard textbook used for MBA study. This is the 6th edition. I think it's in its 7th or 8th edition now. Very, very good book. But I particularly recommend this one, Organizational Behavior and Management by Professors John Martin and Martin Fellants. Why do I recommend it? Because Professor John Martin was my tutor at university when I was doing my MBA in the 1990s. He was also an operations director at Nissan in the UK. And this latest version of the book, the 5th edition, I have written 2 of the case studies for it. So of course I would recommend it. So that's 2 very, very good books on organizational behavior and development. I hope that helps. How can you change the mindset and the behavior mindset for one of our team? Amra Kandil. I'm not sure what the behavior is, Amir, that's going on and the mindset. By the tone of your question, I'm possibly believing that this person could be somewhat difficult, doesn't contribute the way that others do. And is probably a bit of the odd one out, if you like. Yes, you always get them. The way to do it is, well, the way to do it is that you get the team working well. Now, if whilst that is happening and people are motivated and people are inspired and they are moving forward as a team, as a collective group, but still there is someone who isn't part of it, if you like, not fully engaged, you have to hope, after all the conditions have been laid down there, that they will be brought up to the right level by their colleagues, that they will feel themselves a need and a desire to operate at the same level as their peers and their colleagues. If they do not, if there is continuously a negative attitude, a feeling of, I don't really care, I'm not doing this with my heart, I'm doing this because I have to. Well, there comes a time when basically you have to do something about it, because if you don't, then you are going to lose the other people. You're going to lose their respect, you're going to lose their cooperation, because you are not dealing with it. And sometimes it just has to be brutal. Now, I appreciate that not all cultures are happy with that sort of approach, but you cannot tolerate or condone behavior which effectively is going to hold everybody back and frustrate people. And one of the old sayings I like is, you can change the people or you can change the people, but give them every opportunity to succeed. Once you have done that, you can't really do anything else. If you've given them the equipment, if you've given them the resources, if you've given them the knowledge, then you have invested your time and effort in them, and the return has to be expected. If it doesn't, then they clearly are not happy there. They need to find somewhere else to go and work. Okay? How does the organization embed the values it employs, Mazen? And I think, Mazen, you've asked another question as well. Mazen Alizani, does the leadership change the mindset and embedding the values to shape the organizational culture? Yes, it does effectively. You see this very often. When there's a change of leader at some organizations, but even well-established organizations, you see then that over a period of time, the culture of the organization starts to change. And it more reflects the person who has been brought in to lead the organization. It's not just in business. For those of you who are sports fans, let's take the example of football, for instance. You see that, you see examples of that. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of one of the greatest football managers of all time, Sir Alex Ferguson, who led Manchester United to quite spectacular success over 26 years. When Ferguson first came to Manchester United, they were a shell of the club that they had been before in their very successful days of the 1960s and 1950s. And for about 20 years, they had been wandering around in the wilderness, just picking up the odd trophy, but not really mounting any form of sustained challenge to be champions of the country. In fact, had gone, I think it was something like 25 years before they finally won the Premier League. What did he do? He didn't win anything for the first 5 years. He spent the first 5 years changing the entire culture of the club, of the organization. And that wasn't just the players. He knew the players wasn't enough. He had to change the infrastructure. He had to change the support mechanisms, the way people operated and worked, who they reported to. He changed the entire scouting system of the scouting, which on and found people like David Beckham, Paul Scholes, some names which became famous names in football. So yes, you can change the organization's culture and shape it, embedding new values. And Ferguson's values were absolutely no complacency, absolute loyalty to the cause of the club. And I think one of his famous comments was the definition of leadership to me, he said, was making people believe that the impossible was possible. And he actually said to him, that is the difference between leadership and management. So yes, it was a very, very good point. Very good question, actually, as well. Amor Saleh Al-Hati has asked me a question. What is a leader's best asset? Oh, there's so many. There's so many. I would have to say influence. The ability to influence people to do things, and as I said, not do it because they have to, do it because they want to. That to me is a leader's best asset, definitely. Another one on organization behavior. Moteb Al-Godaisi, thanks for your question, Moteb. Organizational behavior is driven by several things such as people, value, cultures, etc. How can we as HR leaders ensure that positive and attractive organizational behavior is in place? Meaning, how can we put it into practice so we can manage the organizational behavior as we wish it would be? Well, that is something that you cannot do on your own as an HR leader. It goes back again to what we've been saying about the overall culture of the organization. And it needs to be assessed by the leadership of the organization on what is the best model going forward. There are some practical examples, but frankly, I haven't got the time to go through those now. I certainly go through them when we do the course as a 5-day course. But you are looking at having to drill down deeply into the organization to see exactly how people think and exactly how they operate. And then and only then can the systems and processes be changed accordingly. Latifa Al-Braiki, can we have a real sample of need of leadership, not management? I think you're saying, I hope I've got this right. What the need for leadership rather than management, an example of it. Well, I think hopefully during the course of the webinar, I've answered that, but I think certainly the Nokia example that I gave you was one of the most modern, one of the most recent examples of where really true leadership linked to vision and innovation was needed. And like I say, Nokia was not a bad company. Nokia is a very good company. But the market was just so dynamic. It wasn't something that could be maintained. And they were investing, but the problem was they didn't know what other people were investing in. I think it's the ability to see further ahead, and this is one thing. This was one thing Steve Jobs was very good at. I'm not a great fan of Steve Jobs as a leader. I think he displayed an awful lot of characteristics which to me were not good leadership practices. But he had vision and he had creativity. And it was that inspired people to come and work with him. And so you'd have to say that this innovation, this creativity, as was shown at Apple in the times when Jobs was taking Apple to new heights, was the perfect example of leadership rather than management, and even ownership by people. For instance, they used to, I'm not sure if they still do, but they used to have the inscription of all the employees who were involved in the design of a particular computer engraved into the computer underneath the casing when it was sold. Now, you'd never see their names, but the people who designed it knew their names were inside that computer. It was quite amazing, you know. I mean, that was real empowerment. That was real involvement. So I'd say, yeah, that's one of the great examples of it. Let's have a look. Who else do we? We've got a few questions about the slides, but my understanding is from Vlatko is that this is going to go out to YouTube as well. So you're going to have a chance of seeing it on there as well again, and the slides with it. Saif Mumtaz, thank you for your question. Give your point of view about most of the organization is using CSP, career succession processes, selection process for leadership. Ooh, wow, that's a good one. Yeah, I don't think I can do that one justice at the moment with this. I think that's one where I'd have to take you through a few points, actually, Saif, if you'd like to. Let's see if we can look at that at a later time. I'll see if I can get back to you on that. Sultan Al-Mazidi, yes, thank you. Not a question, a statement. And you have a very good point. Unfortunately, not every manager is a leader. No, they're not. But what you have to do is get the best out of that person. And the chances are they may display at least one, maybe two or three leadership characteristics, but they don't want to act like a leader. You have to try and bring that out of them. And as I say, when you've got other members of the team who are acting that way, the peer pressure from their colleagues should be enough to bring them forward thinking more like leaders. And I get a lot of people who say, I'm sorry, I simply don't believe that, that it doesn't work. Well, I have to say back in response, I'm sorry too, because it does. The Japanese have proven it to be the case. They do not settle for second best. They do not settle for just satisfactory. It's not enough. They want continuous improvement, and it has to be a perpetual process. And to be able to do that, people have got to display drive, they've got to display a desire to improve things, and they've got to show initiative and creativity. And these are all things which are leadership characteristics. And if they don't, then they don't want them. So you find yourself managers who are capable of being leaders, but they have done everything they possibly can to create an environment of learning, of knowledge, of skills, of empowerment, of ideas generation, which brings out the best in everyone that they have. And we have now been doing this outside of Japan for a good 30 years now. And yes, you see those who will perform and those who won't. But change the people or change the... Where's this one? Sorry, just a minute. Andre Machado, what role does effective leadership play in successful collaborations or partnerships? Thank you for that question, Andre. Good question. It plays a huge part. leadership is essentially, by its very title, by its very name, is a collaboration. It is a partnership. As you saw from one of the slides as well, it is about relationships. And some really good collaborations that have taken place between companies have taken place as a result of their leaders thinking in this sort of way. But and you see this with some of the big multinational corporations. And well, I mean, for instance, I think what was Nokia teamed up with Microsoft, didn't they, as well at one point? And that was when two came together to try and create a more effective partnership. Didn't quite work the way that they wanted, but it was the right way forward for them at the time, given what was going on, but not the one which was going to give them longevity in the product. A leader within their own organization does, as I say, operate completely as a collaborative situation. Yes, they have authority. Yes, the buck stops with them. The accountability is with them. But like I said, it's not about go, it's about let's go. It is a partnership, it is a collaboration. And that's how they inspire people, because they've empowered them. I've got another one here. I'm not sure this. Where is it? Hang on, where's the next one? Sorry, just bear with me. Hanan Al-Awayed. Yeah, I think I've probably answered your question, Hanan. Do I believe that leaders are born? No, I can't disprove it, but equally, no one can prove it either. There is no proof whatsoever. Personally, I don't know. I'm doubtful that they're born, that it's naturally in them. It's possible, but I can't prove it. What I do know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that there is more than enough proof that leaders are developed by their environment. And sadly, I have to say that also includes bad leaders. Some leaders who have degenerated into being absolute psychopaths. And there's been a few of those over the years in history. And sometimes what has been proven with that is that they had a pretty traumatic time when they were young. And that's then become institutionalized in them as they got older. So there's good and bad proof that it is more the environment. So I have doubts that people are natural born leaders, but I'm happy to be persuaded.
Hi, Nigel. If we can do one more and we can wrap it up since we're out of time for today.
Let me just see what we can do. I'm just trying to get to. There's so many good questions, Blackco. It's difficult to choose one. Well, I do like this from Ali Mubaraki right towards the end here, which is more a statement, but I do like this. Ali, thanks for your comment. In our humble opinion, we need both managers and leaders, but we need less managers and more leaders. Yes, totally agree. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we could merge them together? And like I say, it can be done. So I hope that answers that statement for you. Anyway, thanks for all the questions. There's been some great ones, and I've not been able to answer them all, but hopefully we can get through to some of you on it, and hopefully we'll see you in the future. Over to you, Blacko.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much, Nigel, for everything. And on behalf of LEORON, Mr. Nigel, and myself, it has been a grand pleasure to have you here today. And we're honored that you attended this webinar with us. We hope that we have met and even exceeded your expectations, and you have gained as much value from this experience as possible. As Mr. Nigel mentioned before, we have 2 upcoming courses which are delivered by him. The ICOLS International Certificate in Advanced Leadership Skills, which is scheduled on the 17th of May this month. And the next one, COBDM, Certificate in Organizational Behavior Development and Management, scheduled on the 28th of June. We hope that some of you will consider joining us for these programs, and it will be an utmost pleasure welcoming you again. Feel free to contact me or any person from LEORON for any details. We hope that you enjoyed the webinar today and that our collaboration will not end here. Have a lovely evening ahead. Ramadan Karim, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Blacko.
Bye.